been a hot minute, hasn't it? Welcome back to a random introvert online. I'm going to do a video about a little bit of a controversial topic just because my video on the women did so good, unexpectedly good, that I decided, well, maybe people are also curious about the men. So let's get on with it. So the main focus of this video is why do young Moroccan men go for really older white women, as we've seen in multiple shows on TLC, and it's just a common thing that men in poorer countries do when it comes to upgrading their social economical status. And we're just gonna dive deeper into it. I'm not gonna bring any statistics, I'm not gonna bring any things that will have a research backed approach. Rather, I'm just gonna tell you what a Moroccan thinks. Really, this whole channel is just the inside perspective of how we see these type of things as locals. The story in this video is going to be fictional, so just set the record on that, but it will paint a picture, and I think that's all that matters. So let's go back a few generations. There's a saying that goes, you can take a man out of the village, but you can't take the village out of the man. But what happens when the village has nothing more to offer them? So if you watch shows like TLC, they love putting a Moroccan couple in there just because we spice things up. But a lot of these dynamics are a bit funny, and if you look at the couples, you think, why are they even together? It never makes sense. And even in our personal lives, we always have that cousin that married somebody older and went abroad, or your neighbor, or you just sit in a very touristy place and you start seeing these dynamics. So like I said, so far we've only discussed the women aspects of this. As a woman myself, I do have a deeper insight, but as looking into the men's side of things, I can only tiptoe around the subject because I can't give you the insight into this, so I will do my best. So let's go a few generations back and start the story from the beginning, where why getting married became a necessity and not just something you did. Morocco is a country that heavily relied on agriculture for survival, for feeding yourself, and having livestock just meant you were a wealthy person back in the day. Cash itself back then didn't have the relevance it has today. More, you can just exchange things, and if you had livestock in your family, it kind of equated to how wealthy you are. You didn't need to look, to be dripped down and whatnot. You just looked like everybody else. But hey, did you see my shed? And also, as for land, it wasn't that expensive because there wasn't that many people back in the day. And it was dirt cheap. So you could just give somebody a calf and they will give you a massive piece of land, because it just didn't mean much back then. So the combination of land and livestock meant that you were a wealthy person. At least you were able to survive and you were independent off the grid. There was no grid back then though. And agriculture in general needs labor, so it needs men to shovel the manure, it needed women to milk the cows. Agriculture wasn't exactly a man-dominated field, as women also played a role into it. But as times changed, agriculture became more centered. Big companies came in, bought most of the land. It became more concentrated and commercial. So the world slowly leaned towards more of a westernized way of living. And also shortages of water, lack of rain, drought, and generation after generation dividing the land until it just became tiny bits and pieces that didn't mean much, didn't amount to much. So as the world modernized, people slowly started moving towards the cities to make an income individually, as opposed to being clustered in a house as a family. So you needed to go get a job so you could afford groceries, as opposed to having a cow and you can just kill a chicken by the end of the day and eat that. So you needed to provide for your young wife and kids, because back then that's what you did. You got married young, so you were young and your kids were young. So let's delve into this subculture, I would say. It's becoming a subculture, honestly, of getting married young. So one dimension of getting married as a Moroccan was multi-generational houses. That's where the grandfather would buy a massive piece of land, again for dirt cheap, have his kids in there, his kids would have their kids in there, and now you have three generations in one house. Of course, this meant mainly the sons, as the women, when they got married, they left, but the sons stayed and they looked after the land. So a 17-year-old getting married as soon as they grow one chin hair was the norm, because he only needs one room for his wife and his kids. Mind you, back then the rooms were huge. You can literally run in them, so they would just use a curtain to divide, and parents would sleep in one corner, kids in the other. Privacy, we don't know her. So a 17-year-old would automatically have a claim to that land because he has his father's last name. So he also owns a piece of it. So him going and using that land meant he's entitled to it in what it grew. So by default, the whole family would sit around a table. Everyone felt like they belonged and that they were putting in their part as long as they're putting in the labor. The fortune belonged to the family and everybody benefited. But as generations moved through time, the number of people that have a claim to that land would get bigger and bigger, so they each got a smaller and smaller piece. And let's not forget the famous Muslim trope of the older brother stealing all of the inheritance and leaving their siblings without nothing. So then the other siblings would have no other choice but to go to the city, pack their life, and work for cash instead of working the land. So how does this relate to marrying? We'll get there. So as a young man, you find yourself the first generation to move to the city. So now that means you have a legacy to build. You have to buy a house, have a recurring income, you need to have savings, and you need to be able to send money back to the village because, well, mothers are always sick and there's always a bum brother that needs it. So you're grinding, you're saving, you're doing everything you have to do. You even do things that are considered strange, like sending your daughter to school, because well, there isn't much to do, there is no land to attend to, so she might as well get an education. Of course, until somebody proposes to her in the ninth grade, and then you have to say, yeah, okay, good luck. However, your son in the holder of your legacy, in your source of disappointment, however, he's not as manly or strong as you were in his age. He combs his hair, he takes care of how he looks a little too much for your liking. He doesn't speak like you, he lost his rural accent, his goals are shallow and listens to degenerate music. So as the man of the house, you buy the land and you build a house. You build a ground level, which you add another floor to with time, water, electric, and slowly, bit by bit, piece by piece, the house is coming together. You retire at 60, nothing to do, so you just play checkers with your other retired friend. Wherever you find a place to sit. So now your kids are all grown, your son is pushing 30, but he is not ready to do half of what you've done when you were his age. No house, no wife, no kids, and can hardly keep a job. Now, mind you, one of the reasons men have gave up on getting married is the economy. Many people would love to blame a feminist, but even if you are a feminist in a country like this, when you get into the house with your husband, you just revert to gender norms where you're in the kitchen and they're lazing around. I mean, it's better than killing your last brain cell trying to teach a man to do basic things. I just feel like personally people don't refer enough to how important the role of economics in building a family is, and not having that is of course going to contribute to you not having any. So as the son of the first generation in the village, your identity is torn. So you're torn between the regressive world your parents came from and your aspirations to chase an expensive education. And that expensive education is going to get you to where your father was very quickly, as long as you keep investing in it. Because of course relying on education makes you more money than relying on hard labor. Of course your father back in the village didn't have a degree. Reality hits. By the time you're done studying and you have all these degrees, your country is still heavily agricultural. It doesn't need your degree in whatever. It needs farmers or the existing jobs just do not pay you enough for you to start a family. So you're stuck. You do shitty jobs here and there. You apply for jobs, but no answer ever comes back. So you end up never making enough to be able to catch up. So faced with all of this, you're between a hard place and a rock. When you look at your counterparts and you see some of them are employed because they know the right people, some of them are born into rich families, so they just started a business, but some of them kissed their mothers goodbye, took a backpack, and got on a boat to Spain. Since life is not worth living, then might as well risk it all, and it's a 50-50. Some people do make it to the other side, some just die ashore. But the ones that do get there, they make it and they come back very happy. But you're playing it too safe to risk it all, so you need a solution that will cover both birds with one stone. You're young, your hairline is still in place, and you look alright. So you think you'll just marry someone financially stable because you want to prove those cousins in the village wrong and that you're not a loser. So one solution is to find an old white lady. She has the money you want, she has the status you want, and she has the citizenship you want. And the thing is, you're not even planning to pump and dump, if you know what I mean. You actually want to stick it up and be loyal. But of course, like everybody else, that will be tested with time. And I would say that's what we see in shows like TLC or reality TV shows. So everything I just talked about now is just a very played out, I would say, formula or blueprint to why these men go down this route. And it should give you like a cultural background type of idea summary. It's just an act of desperation to go after these women. All in all, it's just the aspiration and the hope for a better life. So let's talk about some fears that women, well, foreign women, can have in this type of situations. Number one, a lot of women have the fear of being taken advantage of for money, obviously. Number two, if you're on the younger side, you fear being fetishized. Now, one thing about being fetishized is, growing up, I didn't really mind the idea of being somebody's fetish. I was like, okay, well, they like me and what they like, what's wrong with that? But then you grow older and you mature more and you realize, wait a minute, they don't like me, they like my shell. They don't like who I actually am as a mind or a spirit. And it's like, oh, the shell is not always going to be pretty, you know, so do you like me for me or not? So you're not really valuable to them as a you, you're just valuable to them as your skin suit, if that makes sense. And of course, the fear of being used for their citizenship. That's the thing, men use women all the time. I know we only focus on women using men, but it's interchangeable. It's both of them, neither of them is good. The thing is with men though, they're more ruthless, goal oriented, and they don't have as much guilt or remorse as a woman would show. And let's blame the older women for a second, because why would you think a young man would go for you? I mean, let's just put some logic behind that. Of course, you let them woo you, but you did live through enough life and you have long life experience to know what men are like and how they act. So why would you let somebody younger fool you into thinking, oh, you're the most gorgeous thing they've ever seen? And I'm sorry, but I have to be blunt. For me, I always thought this type of situation were just obviously sugar mommy and sugar baby type of situation, and they both agreed. The problem is, you find that these women fly for miles to go see these men, and they agree to their proposals, and they agree to building a romantic relationship. And they start supporting the monthly gifts, trips, this, that, and it's like, lady, what are you doing? Like, unless you agree or unless you understand that that's a sugar mommy type of, gestures, you shouldn't really get emotionally involved in that. And then these young men start talking about having kids for the first time while these women have grandkids. Watching shows like TLC truly gives you the ugly reality of what ambition and drive to get a green card looks like. And you don't really hear a lot of these stories working out. It's always they just get to the other side and dip, or wait until they get their papers, then divorce. And in a lot of situations, these men have a wife and kids back home that they're sending money to, and they're just waiting to finalize those citizenship papers to break up with the old lady to bring the young lady in. And also another thing, you don't have to be old to get used. So far I've just addressed older women, but then there are women that are younger that are also getting used. And like these ladies in TLC, they're young and it doesn't look too good. They're being treated horribly. So let's break down why. A, you're an outsider to the culture. Obviously, culture is this subtle, unseen thing. As locals, we can see it, but as an outsider, you can't. You probably didn't act right in front of his parents, in front of his friends. You probably did something that, I don't know, you stepped out of line or you embarrassed them. But you can't tell because everybody's smiling, being nice to you, so you just think, oh, it's all good. Number two, they're embarrassed by you because you want to do things like PDA. You want to hold hands outside. What you're wearing may not be appropriate in front of the family, especially in front of the parents. You probably touched him in front of his family. And it doesn't exactly have to be somewhere indecent. We just don't touch at all, especially if we're not married to the person yet. And that's somewhat indecent. It's a very conservative place. Number three, people see through the grift, and he's probably embarrassed by it. Well, embarrassed for himself. Maybe he is out of your league, maybe you're out of his league financially, so the grift is in plain sight, people are talking and whispering, and as the guy, you might tune it out, but it's only a matter of time until people start watching you, and you turn into a cooker pressure on the inside, because now people are watching you, your ambitious ass, even closer, hoping you would fail. And because of that, the dude might just lash at his girl for it. And lastly, him and his family have to accommodate you, which honestly, people are kind of done and tired of doing that. People just don't have the bandwidth to accommodate strangers anymore. Well, at least in my situation. But what if it's the only way their son can have a better life? Then they just suck it up and, you know, take it in. But it's a very unsustainable situation. So remember, you're marrying an African that's also Muslim. So culturally, religiously, you're like the furthest thing apart. You can take a man out of a third country, but you can't take the third country out of the man. So next, let's discuss some challenges that could arise. Their personality and ego. Won't do PDA, won't hold your purse in public, jealous and overbearing, so they may not like you wearing short clothes or makeup, and also might get mad when men look at you, but it's not really your fault, is it? Number two, the financial status and strain, and that could possibly be on you as a girl, because who's paying for things, who's buying things? If it's you, the woman, then it's not a normal situation, because if he doesn't have the money or the job, then you are emasculating him, so he's feeling less than. And men have a hard time letting go of control. Number three, how ambitious they are. Ambition is not a bad thing, especially in a man. I mean, it's the complete opposite of being a bum, right? But are you the bridge to that financial destination? Number four, how progressive they are. Things like, will they wash the dishes? Will they do laundry? Will they change a diaper? Things you must test before getting into it. I'm not even saying ask, test. Because words are easy. Actions are not. Religion, and this is a big one. As a woman, you have to convert into your man's religion. That's the thing. Either in practice or on paper. And that's the thing. Some men will force you to act religious, even though you don't want to. Number six, family dynamics. In here, man's mother can be your number one competitor, especially if he is her only son. He is her emotional support, and she raised him to be just the man she wanted. You come and take that. Therefore, piece of advice, show kindness and keep distance. Another dimension to this is parents getting in the way of your relationship is very, very common. And they get to have a say in it, that's the thing. So you may not be who they want to raise their grandkids. So let's react to some videos related to this topic. I just feel like this video is too long as it is, so I might do a part 2.